Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of the DeKalb City Council, April 9, 2018. Prior to our officially starting the meeting tonight, for those of you who may want to speak to the one item on the agenda this evening, you're more than welcome to do that. Fill out a speaker request form. They're found in the back of the room, and give those to our city clerk, Sue Herman, and she'll get those up to me, and we'll call on you there during that portion of the program. Having said that, I'm going to ask Sue to call the roll, please.
Jacobson?
Here.
Finucane?
Here.
Marquardt?
Here.
Fagan?
Here.
Noriko?
Here.
Burbick?
Here.
Favor?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. There are no items on the regular agenda which are on this agenda, and I'm going to see that, yes, city manager search. Okay. Before I turn it over to our Human Resources Director, Chris Randall, I just want to say that we are devoting our full Committee of the Whole meeting tonight to the search for a new city manager. We're not going to be talking personalities. We're not going to be talking specific candidates. We're not going to be talking about whether or not we feel that somebody who has this experience or that experience may or may not necessarily be the best for the job, although we will be talking about qualifications. But it's very important to me that we keep the search for our city manager and the process that we're going to be going through over the next several months before this city council makes a final decision on the appointment of a new city manager. I think that's very, very important, and we want that to be as transparent and open and as participative with our publics, if you will, and I do say publics, as we possibly can. So having said that, the one consideration for our Committee of the Whole meeting tonight, as listed, is city manager search, and I'm going to ask our Human Resources Director, Chris Randall, to speak to this item. I've also asked Chris to prepare a PowerPoint tonight so that those in the audience and those at home can have a good idea of what we are going to be talking about, and some of that information was shared with City Council prior to this evening. So, Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council and members of the community. And as the Mayor pointed out, as his direction, this next item is to initiate the recruitment process and to seek the direction from Council regarding the selection of the city's next city manager. And there are many steps to any recruitment process, and what most people encounter and they're accustomed to is they see the job announcement and then they see that the position has been filled. But there is a lot more underneath of that iceberg that goes with the entire recruitment process, and that's what we're going to talk today. I will be your tour guide. I will be guiding you through all of those steps of a recruitment process, and I will be first presenting you with options for Council to consider. I will provide you with a description and information regarding each step. I will answer any questions that you may have about each step, but ultimately we'll be seeking direction from Council. How do you want to proceed with each step of the recruitment process? I also have with me today Michelle Brenning. She is the city recruiter. So along with HR, myself, and Assistant City Manager, interim City Manager Patty Hoppenstead, we are going to be coordinating this process in conjunction with the Council. Before I begin, I just want you to, as we go through this process and we go to each one of those steps, and as you consider each option that you have before you, Keep in mind that every decision you make will impact three major overarching elements of a recruitment process, which is the time, how long it will take to conduct the recruitment, the length of the period from the beginning to the hiring of a candidate, how much is going to cost, and the pool of available candidates that we are competing for. So the very first step is the recruitment, and the very first thing the council to consider is this going to be an in-house recruitment or an external recruitment? A little bit of background, an in-house recruitment, the city does benefit right now from a very knowledgeable, skillful, and experienced staff that can conduct the recruitment in-house. But it also must be pointed out, however, that every recruitment, especially at this caliber, it's very complex and time-consuming. Should council decide to move forward with the in-house recruitment, this will significantly impact all of the 22 current active recruitments that we are doing at this time. And in order to give due priority and to conduct an expeditious city manager search, we all need to keep in mind that all other recruitments will be put on hold, will be put on a back burner, including the city engineer, public works superintendents, and some positions in the police department. An external, sure.
Why is that?
Because of the limited amount of staff hours.
So, if I can ask that, what you're saying is, it's going to take 100% of your staff to search out for a city manager.
So there is a lot of components to the process, and that's what we are going to be looking for direction from the council, depending of the amount of the involvement. If we are going to have a lot of input, there is a lot of phone calls, we receive a lot of inquiries. Even before opening this discussion, we already got 3 phone calls this week. So no, it's not 100%, but it will take a significant amount of staff.
Then why would you have to cut out 100% of anyone hiring and
They
freeze
will be
everything?
put it on a back burner. So we are going to be working on them as we have time available.
Back burner or?
It's not going to be a priority. City manager recruitment will be a priority.
Thank you.
Mhm. So an external venue is, should the city retain an outside party, the potential benefit is that we are going to be able to access a larger pool of available candidates that are already being probably participating in some other searches with the company. As well as this company will have a dedicated staff to do the city manager recruitment. So the other advantage of a utilization of an outside party is it will eliminate any possible perceived conflict of interest. So for consideration of the council, what would be your wish? To do an inside recruitment, an in-house recruitment, or to retain an outside recruitment company? And if that's the decision of the council, we will then proceed with a request for proposal.
We have, I think, what I'd like to do tonight, Council, if it is your pleasure, is as we go through these points, and the next one, for example, will be steering committee, I believe, that we're going to see up on the screen. But before we go to that, you see what we've talked about here, what Chris has presented. We have the in-house recruitment, the external recruitment. The external recruitment, while costing money, would not then mean that as much in-house time would be devoted to the process, because that outside firm would be doing most of the paperwork. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Your HR is still going to be coordinated. As you can imagine, we need to seek input to see what kind of qualifications, and we're going to go all through this step, and then logistics. we are still the main point of contact, and we are going to be the liaison, doesn't matter what. So there's still going to be work that HR will be coordinating.
Okay. Any thoughts from council on this number, on this point? I think we have, what, about 10 slides?
Correct.
So we have about 10 points. First of all, first hand came up was Alderman Favors.
So I had the same question that the mayor and Alderman Fagan had, but I'd actually like to ask a question of Alderman Fanouken and Alderman Jacobson. In the past, have we used a recruitment firm or have we used internal resources? And then to follow on to that, not personality-wise or results of the person we gained through that process, did you feel like the communication with the process that was used in the past was better than expected, or would you suggest going to a different route?
Well, I'll go first, Dave, if you don't mind. Actually, I thought the fact that we use an external search firm helped us broaden the pool of candidates that we had available. In-house, we can only do so much. Where using the external, they're going to have a lot more contact and networking than we would. There's several search firms that are capable of helping us with this. The firm that we used last time, or some other firms around the area and nation that could help out. And, how broad a pool of candidates do we want to draw from? I think that'll come out a little bit later. Do we just do a regional search or we do a national search? I do recall last time one of the finalists was from Michigan, and I don't know that we would have had that type of out-of-state candidate without using a search firm.
Thank you. David?
In going through the process last time, obviously, they are a very well-known resource, the one search firm that we used last time, and I would assume we'd use this time as because they're semi-local.
It's
Again,
Voorhees. Yeah.
there's two. There's Voorhees and Gov.
It's GovHR. It used to be Voorhees,
Voorhees. They're all
yes, and
combined.
GovHR, now they're,
all the same
is in
company.
partnership.
Yeah, okay.
In going through that process, we actually got several, well, Bill mentioned the second candidate. We got people as far as the West Coast, Denver and further west. Kansas City, I think one of our candidates came from. We did get 20 or 22 candidates, if I remember correctly, off the bat, based on our advertising. And Voorhees immediately separated out about half of them based on qualifications we had set, based on educational recommendations we had set, based on a litany of factors as to whether they felt those people were qualified. So I think they turned over 10 or 11 to what we had as a committee at that point to review some of them. And I think it was Bob and I that was on that committee, Bob Snow and I. And we went through the individual 11 books and interviewed 5 or 6 of those candidates in live interviews before we narrowed it down to the group that basically went to the panels. And we had multiple panels. We had a staff panel, we had a community panel, we had a council. Obviously, the council did some interviews, and we opened that up to several people and tried to create some sort of fair ranking position based on the top 3 or 4 candidates. And in that process, again, I understanding how those numbers worked and seeing how that process worked, the pick we chose was the unanimous consideration of all of those individuals. And it was, it was very obvious that those numbers weren't close in most cases. So, again, I think the process worked going out. I think there's some other determinations and considerations we should probably consider in that process as to how we do the search and what our requirements are. But beyond that, it worked last time the way it was supposed to work. It gave us a candidate that the community and the groups agreed unanimously on, and we hired that individual. So, and seeing how it worked, the process I felt worked.
Okay, great. Alderman Norrico.
I wanted to recommend using an outside search firm, at least to some extent echoing the comments regarding the value of getting a wide pool of candidates. A search firm is much better able to get those so-called passive candidates, the people who may be thinking about looking but, haven't actively started, but, a good opportunity presented, they would come forward as candidates. And through phone conversations and, networking and so forth. So I think for that reason, it would be useful to work with a firm.
Alderman Fagan?
Well, after listening to the HR director and listening to everybody here, I'm absolutely for going outside research. Plus, when we're talking about money-wise, having it inside, if you're talking about 6 months of putting everything on back burner, and I don't think it's fair to the other departments to hold off on hiring. That, we were talking about 15 to 25,000 cost range, where if we took 6 months of HR department, I would assume that'd be a heck of a lot more money. So.
Yeah, there's 3 points that I want to point out. First is Alderman Favor, as regarding to your concerns with communication. I wasn't here when that process started, but I can assure you that regardless of how the council will choose to do the recruitment, the communications piece and being able to be that liaison will rest on the city and HR. And we're going to be making sure that that feedback is being provided and the communication is provided in a timely manner. It's still going to be our responsibility to keep making the process moving through according to all of these steps. And another thing that I want to reiterate, Alderman Fagan, is HR department is all hands on deck. And when we say when it rains, it pours. So we get a lot of recruitments, and now it's starting the seasonal. And we're starting to be proactive. And there is a lot of work that's done, and we do take a lot of pride, and we do all the recruitment the way it's supposed to be, and that's why it takes time. It begins from even going and then reviewing all the job descriptions. So while we can't do in-house, absolutely, but, and then you, as the council, will tell me what's your priority is, and that's how we're going to define our timeline.
Subsequent to Anne Marie Gora's resignation, I did quite a bit of homework in terms of what we did last time, and Dave Jacobson reviewed some of that. I just want to make sure that if we go with a external recruitment firm, and there seems to be some consensus already evolving out of this, that that's what we might want to do, I just want to make sure that we also involve organizations like the Illinois Municipal League and others across the state. And, we have one of the strongest city manager farms over at Northern right now. So I just want to make sure that we make that process, if you will, as broad as possible.
Absolutely, and then we're going to get to it. There is one slide for it as well.
Okay, good,
Mhm.
okay.
So do I get a consensus?
Alderman Verben.
Would you want their help filling some of these other positions that have been difficult to fill? So along the way, if council chooses to hire a firm, could they be leveraged in some way to help us with these other positions?
Oh, absolutely. It's just matters of cost for us right now. Like I said, we do reach out, and I know we're not talking about the positions now, but we do reach out to a broad network of advertisements. And I know you heard me saying that before, and I keep saying that the market right now is the employee, not the employer. There is more. Actually, I thought that I would never live to see this day, but there's more jobs and there's qualified people to apply for the jobs. And that's why it's becoming difficult. And it's with the baby boomers retiring and not having a lot of quality pool of candidates available. But that's something we could absolutely explore.
Thank you.
Mike, did you have a comment or a question?
Just that I was leaning towards external, just to get the broadest range of candidates. And to take advantage of their experience in doing that and getting that into our system. I think we'll end up with a better candidate pool to choose from.
Okay, let's move along then with
All
the
right.
second slide.
All right, one down, 8 more to go. All right, then the next one is the steering committee. So the consideration for council is, should we establish a steering committee? And if so, who will be assigned? So in order to conduct an effective and expedite recruitment process, it is best practice to assign a recruitment steering committee that will be responsible for monitoring the process, setting the priorities, and providing timely direction when needed, and to provide the communication to stakeholders. A city manager search committee is typically composed of a mayor, a city council member, and an HR to be able to be the liaison. And this would not in any way deter any full community input, as the steering committee will work closely with the council and be able to receive feedback from stakeholders. So is the wish of the council to assemble a steering committee? And if so, who will be assigned?
Seems to make sense to me. Let's have some discussion. Any questions or thoughts regarding, we have some consensus. I think that we want that national, or that search firm, that regional, national search firm, and that we would want a steering committee.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Next.
Who would you like besides you, Mayor, to help you in HR?
I'd like to ponder over that, give that some thought, unless council feels that Chris's suggestion that a council member, a mayor, and an HR professional be the steering committee.
That's your decision on who to pick for council.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to think about that a little bit more? Okay, yeah.
We will have time. We are going
Yeah,
to
we
be
will.
preparing the
Yeah.
request for proposal for the search firm, so gives you some time to think about it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, next is the position profile. And this is the most critical step of any recruitment process. The position profile is that announcement brochure, is the document that will outline all of the expectations of the city council and the city of DeKalb will have of its next city manager. The position profile will have all of the qualifications, education, skills, and all expectations of the council. So we are going to be working, assuming we are going to have a search company, we are going to be working with them to put together that profile. And during this phase, the council will be called upon to define what experience, attributes, education, and leadership skills that you expect on the next city manager. And as the council works on the creation of that profile, what we can do to facilitate and to help you navigating through all of those documents is that we can provide you some background material, such as any other brochure announcements from other municipalities that recently searched for city manager. Obviously, the search company will also provide a template to work from, but we are going to be working with, in the coordination with the council. And aside from those samples, a question that I have is, are there any background material that you feel will be helpful for you as you were working in determining the position profile? Is there anything we start researching besides samples of other communities that you would like to see?
Yeah, Bill.
Well, one of the things that I did today was went and looked at the text from the brochure from last time. I think that would be helpful if we had copies of the brochure from last time available for everybody on council to share. And if not the brochure itself, at least the text from it.
Will do.
Any other thoughts in that regard? Dave and Bill, were you fairly satisfied that when we hired our last city manager, that the points that were up there on the board were pretty well provided to you? Yeah.
Going through that process, again, I felt that it was seeing multiple candidates through their interviews. In many cases, the interviews were almost identical to each other in some cases. The buzzwords, it was clear from those that had done their homework and read what we wanted to see. I mean, they basically came in and regurgitated it back to us. And it was who was the best at regurgitating it back to us that really moved up the list at that point. Again, that's one of my hurdles with the process. I appreciate that this is the standard way of going about it. I think we're jumping the horse in a little bit and rushing through this path. I appreciate that we're opening up this discussion tonight. Again, I don't know necessarily that we should be doing some of these things right off the bat. I think we should be having a very frank discussion about what the council needs and wants at this point, and what the community needs and wants. And having some conversations yesterday, and I shared my comments with the mayor today, it is quite clear out in the digital world we live in, and going down the rabbit hole a bit yesterday, this community has a significant lack of trust with City Hall, whether it's us sitting in these chairs, whether it's them sitting in those chairs. It's spreading like wildfire. And some of the information is fair, a lot of it I don't feel is. But in terms of going out and finding someone, again, out of the community here to come in and try to lead the ship right now, I don't know even if we've gotten to that point. I truly and firmly believe that we have good local residents that have local ties to the community, that have the relationships they're going to need to be successful, that have the business experience they're going to need to be successful here in our local community existing. And I think that should be part of the discussion at this point is, do we even need to go out to a search? Do we need to look someone locally that the residents here and the constituents we face know and trust already to have the discussion of what it's going to take to rebuild that bridge of trust between City Hall and the community? I don't know if necessarily jumping out into the market right now and pulling someone else in is going to be that answer. I don't know if it's going to help that situation.
Well, that thought, Dave, is so much appreciated. And I think we need to go forward with that, with your sentiments very much embedded in our going forward. I will say this, you used the word hybrid on that first slide. And so I'd hate to think that if we in fact choose a search firm, that we would preclude anybody local. And anybody with, as Dave says, the experience, the savviness about this community and all that. So I think your point is well taken. Yes, Alderman Riegel.
To address one of Alderman Jacobson's concerns in terms of the selection process, although this is a step further down the line, the types of interview questions that are asked are really important, because if you ask unexpected questions, people will have, hopefully they'll still be prepared, but you're less likely to get, 5 answers that sound the same.
Before we go down to advertising and outreach, and
There's two more points on this slide, Mayor.
That's a very important piece, but let me be very candid here. I'm sure I would not be surprised if each and every one of these 7 people flanking me tonight have already been given names of folks locally who might fill the bill. I know I certainly have. So I think to Dave's point, we need to make sure that that's in the mix. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, and when we talk about the profile, it's not going to be HR or the search company is going to do. We are just providing you the material to put together that brochure. And I don't want to get into much in the legalities, but another thing that a brochure will help, that profile will help you with potential legal or equal employment opportunity. Why did you interview Sally, but you didn't interview Joe, or vice versa? Because here are the qualifications. Do you want somebody with a high school degree, or you want somebody with a master's? Do you want somebody that's a public speaker, or you want somebody with a more tuned financial background? So that is what we'll be looking for. And also for a candidate, candidates, they will be looking for jobs that not only looks good for them, but it will fit their career and what they want to keep pursuing. And that's what's very important to have the profile.
Let's move along. We're about halfway through our committee of the whole meeting. I do want to allow our folks who have come to the meeting tonight to want to speak to this issue to have time. I'd also like to wrap this up, even if it means that we have to continue this to another cow.
Absolutely.
But go ahead, Chris.
So as part of the profile, too, another thing that the council will have to keep in mind is the compensation and benefits. Salary range, training and travel, vehicle reimbursements, relocation assistance, if any. And again, we are not looking for specific final numbers right now, but the candidate profile must provide a rough number estimate in there, because this information may deter or give us incentive for people to apply. So as we're going to be working on a profile, that information will also be needed. And one last piece on this PowerPoint is the role of the City Council. Chapter 3 outlines the roles and duties and responsibilities of the city manager. Should council wants to make any revisions to that, it will probably be a good idea to do it before we start the recruitment process. Because this way, whoever is applying for the job, they will know exactly what are their responsibilities and duties and their scope of authority. So all of this will be part of the profile we will be coordinating with the council.
Okay, let's move along.
Hopefully this one's going to be an easy one. Advertising and outreach. Mainly, are we looking for a broad scope, a national search, or a local search? A national search obviously will attract more applicants and will that demonstrated ability to manage in a complex urban environment. A local search, on the other hand, may provide applicants that are already attuned with the local needs, the local problems, and the regional and economic issues. And when I say local, it's in the surrounding area on the Chicago and metropolitan area and the state. The determination of the scope is purely where, as Mayor already alluded, where are we going to advertise? Obviously, we are going to advertise to all of those venues that we already do, the IML, the ICMA, all of those networks of public administrators. But if we choose to do a national, we will probably also want to do on the National League of Municipalities and so forth. So really, the only difference is where we are going to advertise, and it may or may not impact the length of the process, because we are going to be have to be a little bit more flexible should the need of a candidate to come from out of state to travel.
Okay, Alderman Fagan?
Can we do both?
Well, if you do a national, we are going to do the local. So
Okay.
it's local
Yeah,
or
you do that
national
local.
or, yeah.
Any more thoughts on that? Michael?
I would say both,
All right.
because you may have somebody that's from this area originally that's in another state, you know, that, hey, I want to come back to Illinois,
Absolutely. Like I
That's
said, it
not the
just
normal,
impacts where we advertise.
you know.
Okay,
All right.
moving along.
All right. Everybody's favorite, residency.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So
That slide we can get
just the direction that I've been looking for, if I had to guess, that's what I would have guessed. In a previous announcement, the residency was within 12 months of employment, and the city also afforded relocation incentives. Would also that be accurate to include in the recruitment profile?
Any thoughts on residency, et cetera? Tony?
No, well, actually, I was going to make this point on the last slide, is when we're talking about doing a national search, are we also then considering relocation expenses? Yeah, it's something we need to discuss, and what will be the cost of relocation is there an upper limit? Are we, but yes, on residency, I'm fine with within 12 months of the first.
Yeah, last time we required that our city manager candidate, Anne Marie Gora, she had to obtain residency within the city limits within a period of 12 months. Is that something that still should be realistic? And the extension of moving expenses was $3,000. David?
In having that conversation last time, I know it was the original intent and desire of the council to do a 6-month residency requirement. At that time, obviously, coming out of a recession, understanding that the candidate we chose was semi-local, I mean, within an hour commute, and that it would take some time to potentially acquire a home here and dispose of a home elsewhere. I think we were more cognizant when the contract came to us and more willing to extend that slightly for in that situation. Understanding the housing market now, understanding that to be successful in this role, you need to be here. You need to be enmeshed in the community. You need to be engaged in this community. You need to be here. Again, I would love to see a 6-month. Especially if someone's coming in from out of state, the reality is that's going to be probably less than that. They're going to have, they can't commute to Colorado or to Michigan or to wherever else they may come from. Again, I think we should target 6 months, and if for some reason there's outstanding circumstances that make us extend that, great, but let's get them here. Let's get them here, let's get them rolling, let's get them moved in, and being part of the community if they're not already.
Good. Kate?
I would like to take a look at the compensation, the moving expenses. I think that, you know, if we do get that candidate from Colorado, $3,000 probably would not move a household, you know, from that distance. So we might want to, you know, do a range. If the person's moving within 300 miles or 500 miles, we do up to 3,000 or 4,000, then a little bit more if, you know, they're further.
So one thing that we can do on the brochure is just simply stated that relocation may be provided.
Is nego, or
Yeah.
or
Yes, and then that will
negotiable.
be
It's
part of the
negotiable.
negotiation.
Yeah.
We don't put final numbers.
Yeah,
Alderman
that would
Fagan?
be fine.
Yeah.
Let me pose this question to Alderman Jacobson, because I think you kind of allured to it a little bit. Yeah, you're right, they would come in and start working right away. But, you know, I'm also concerned about someone just renting an apartment and having a residence in another state or somewhere else, rather than, is there a word like permanent residency or full-time residency that you can put in?
That will be what the council would define as residency. And that's the big conundrum. That is a residency a rental
That's-
residency?
that's what I'm
Is a
saying.
temporary residency? What do you consider residency?
This council is so clear. It has been clear over the past several months what residency is. And if anybody who may be in the finalist pool is not perfectly clear when their interview is over about how we feel on residency, I'd be surprised. Yeah, Bill?
I was just going to comment on Alderman Fagan's comments. Part of the problem is that they may not be able to sell their other residence wherever they've been from, so they may rent short-term and then eventually purchase here. I know that is something that the previous city manager has had to do. I've heard of that of other positions, not necessarily within the city of DeKalb, but where somebody, part of the family moves on ahead, while the rest of it stays home to finish the school year or something like that, and the person who goes out first just rents until they can sell their home and move, so.
You know, if I was talking to somebody in that scenario, Bill, do you know what I'd say? I want you here on the weekend. I want you to get an empathy for what this community is all
Oh,
about.
and
So
see,
them
that's a
going
big-
back on the weekend and then coming back on a Monday morning,
No, I understand that. That's not what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying is that sometimes people can't afford to own two houses, is my point. That's what I'm trying to make here. And sometimes they have to rent short-term to make it work.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Verbeek?
I also support the 6-month timeframe.
Okay. 6 months seem to be,
Yep.
okay. Yeah. Mike?
Just throw a wrench. And there are people that, don't want to own,
Right.
don't necessarily want to own. I mean, we don't necessarily have to, we just have to live,
Yeah.
On a permanent basis. So there are people that don't own for whatever reason. It's just like if somebody leases a car instead of owning a car, it's somewhat similar to that frame of mind. As long as they're here and they're committed and doing that, that's what I would be for.
Yeah, I would prefer somebody that was an owner, because then they'd be paying their fair share of taxes.
Take
But-
ownership.
But you know what I mean? It's a sense of ownership, but your point is well taken. Okay, let's
Mark.
move along.
All right, this should be an easy one, too. Posting and timeline. So how long we will be posting a position? Typically, we post for 30 days. Any other position with the cities with is 30 days posting. A longer than 30 days posting will allow for a greater number of applicants to submit their applications, but you will be delaying the selection process, as we cannot initiate it until the position closes. And on the other hand, a shorter posting than 30 days will have the opposite impact. You will have a limited candidate pool. So so we would like to know if the council wishes is for a 30 days posting for applications.
Alderman Areco?
Could we consider doing something like applications will be accepted until the position is filled, applications received by such and such a date will receive preference?
Absolutely.
And, that way, if the person who walks on water comes in, at the 11th hour and we haven't filled the position, we can still, consider, but we're keeping the process moving.
Absolutely. We can post it as open until filled, but the first revision on applications will be on this date, and the first round of interviews will be that date. So if procrastinators, if they're going to wait until after that, then they might miss the boat.
Yeah,
But absolutely, we can't do that, because as we go through the process, if you don't find the person that will fit the city's needs, we still have some more candidates on the pool. Yes. And the timeline will highly obviously depend of the decisions that the council will make throughout the process. And HR will coordinate the development of a tentative timeline with the search company as soon as we have all of the components aligned. All right?
Quick question, if I may.
Sure.
When we did, does the records indicate how long a time period we used last time? Dave and I were thinking it was more like 45 to 60 days last time. Again, maybe you could just...
So it was August 5th to September 6th, so it was 30
It was
days.
just 30 days, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Candidate review.
All right, so the next phase to consider is the selection process will always begin with the revision of the applications. So the question to council is, so either HR or the search company will perform the initial screening of the applications. And the screening will be looking at all of those qualifications and all of those expectations that was aligned on the candidate profile as identified by council. And we're going to screen the applications for the candidates that meet the minimal qualifications. So the question is, at that point, will the steering committee participate in the initial review with HR?
Thoughts?
We can get 10 apps, we can get hundreds, so.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're going to want to ponder, so.
Sure.
Let's move along. I'm very sensitive to the time. We've got 4 people who want to speak, and I'm going to hold you to the 3 minutes, so that's 12 minutes. So we've got to be completed here in about 5 minutes.
Sure.
Chris.
And the next one, it's not something that we need answered today, but that's something that surely will be nice to know as soon as possible, which is going to be the wish of the council regarding the interview structure and the candidate selection. Prior, there was a big involvement of panels that was with elected officials and appointed community members, members of other government entities, collective bargaining, and staff representatives. So what we are going to be looking for counseling direction is, are we going to do a first round of interview with a select group that the council will select, and then the 2 or 3 that move past that phase will do an interview with the various panels? Do you want all candidates that pass the first screening, or the top 5 to do with the panel? So those are some of the things that the council will need. And if panels will be a wish of council, we would like to know what is the makeup of the panels, so we can start scheduling and putting in people's calendar, because this will have the biggest impact in securing the dates and everybody's calendar, and conflicts in the calendars. So, and that's something to consider. Last time, 47 people were participating in the process, and it's going to be a huge undertaking in coordinating that. So we would need that feedback sooner than later.
Any thoughts on that process? Okay, final point. Excuse me, David.
I just want to make sure when we go through that process that it's an open and fair process to get as many different constituencies involved into that process. I know there were some worries last time through, and I think even on Gene's search, when we did the police, or the police chief search, that there was some belief in some areas of the community that they weren't adequately and well enough represented. And I think we should take very specific steps to make sure that we get faces into the room that aren't the normal faces in the room.
And it gets back to that trust thing, too, that you were talking about. Yeah, Alderman Verbeek.
And I would suspect we would have the lists of people that participated last time, so
Yes,
being
we do.
cognizant of new people. Going back a slide, I would prefer if City Council did, if we review all applicants that meet the minimum qualifications. I believe that we should be looking at each and every one of those.
That makes sense. Okay, last slide.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to have public participation.
Sure, and we are absolutely going to provide the list of people that participated, and we are going to be looking for the names that you would like to participate in the interviews. And the very last one is just to wrap everything up. At the time of a job offer, that's the very last step of a recruitment process. The offer is extended to the identified candidate, and the offer is always contingent on the candidate passing a completion of pre-employment and medical evaluation. And then at that point, the mayor and the city attorney will work directly with the candidate and his or her attorney to develop the city agreement and to finalize the compensation and benefits packet. So, are there any other considerations for council? Otherwise, what we are going to be doing is we are going to start in a request for proposal tomorrow, and hopefully this week have it sent to search parties. And I will be looking for the steering committee members, Mayor, because then at that point when we receive, we are going to be contacting those members to keep the process moving forward.
Okay, now when you say tomorrow, I just want to say, whoa.
No,
Whoa.
we are going to be working
Okay,
on a
you can-
request
yeah.
for proposal tomorrow.
Okay, I just want you to be perfectly clear. I don't want something to go out of this building tomorrow without us having some
Absolutely.
conclusion. Now, speaking of conclusion, we have 4 speakers. I know they're all going to adhere to the 3-minute or less time limit that we like to put on, but we've been very flexible of late. Dwayne Brown, you were here first. Dwayne, you were here about, what was it, 4:30 or something?
I wanted to be first.
Yeah.
Dwayne Brown. Being a city manager is not a typical CEO type of job. To be successful, a city manager needs to get his or her hands dirty, roll up their sleeves and mix it up with the diverse community members. Elected officials with differing views and colleagues ranging from police officers to planners. In order to demonstrate understanding of these diverse functions, a city manager needs to display sincere interest, become sensitive to the needs of these different disciplines, and understand the role each discipline plays in the success of a community. This is a 24/7, 365 commitment. Some of the qualities a city manager should have are a strong communication skills, good judgment, empathy. The manager must know the type of people who make up the audience. 70% of the staff that was consulted in a survey said they had too much of a workload. Dedication, organizational skills, adaptability, a level-headed attitude, a background in analytics, an ability to engage the community, and passion. Good city managers have leadership and to organize big projects. They need to be able to win support from residents as well as multiple departments. At the same time, they need to be humble enough to take direction from the mayor and city council. The city manager needs to be honest and transparent, understanding what the people want. The best analogy is that a city manager is like a quarterback. They need to take the coach's strategy and make sure that the rest of the team executes it well. I wanted to comment. In 2004, we had, in the search for the city manager, we had an applicant that wanted to accept the job for $80,000. The mayor had already handpicked the applicant of his choice, and he had 4 councilmen in his pocket. I gave a speech, and they gave him $115,000 when he was ready to, when another applicant was ready to accept it for $80,000. I don't want the same thing to happen this time. Ask the candidate what they're willing to accept. Negotiate. If they're willing to accept less, and they're qualified, and the candidate is our choice, take it. Don't negotiate, give them a higher offer. We have a lot of problems here. We have crime, we have lack of growth, we have budget deficits, we have streets and fleet. We have many problems, and the new city manager needs to jump in immediately and tackle these. So, I mean, there's a lot of problems, and we need a better vetting process. And I also wanted to comment, what happened to the 2-week proposal? I mean, this is sudden, the 2-week notice. This is sudden. Our last community development director, I was here at the city council meeting, and the next day, the city manager said she's no longer an employee of the city. What happened to a notice? There should be something in the contract giving us a 30-day notice, at least 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Mark Charvat, you have an opinion on this?
I think I do. Actually, Mayor, you were quoted in the paper saying you want people to come forward and speak on this. So
absolutely.
That's what I hope more people will do throughout the process. Chris, I have a quick question for you. This whole thing about 100% of the staff time being devoted to hiring a city manager, I think that's total hogwash. Do you think when the chairman of GE resigns that the GE Corporation stops hiring managers? That's not true. That's total hogwash. You need to multitask like private industry does. I thought that was absolutely ludicrous, and the fact that some of you are buying into that is ridiculous. We need to focus on a couple things here, city manager duties and policies. And I know we're going to be advertising the position as far as what the city manager is supposed to do and what we're expecting. We need to change the city manager's spending authority, let the future city manager know we need to lower that down from $20,000 to $5,000 for emergency spending. City manager should not be planning council agendas. I would like the council to decide what goes on the agenda. We elected you to lead us, not the city manager. It seems like it's her or his agenda on the agenda. I would like it to be the public's agenda. That's why you guys are sitting there. I agree, Dave, you're dead on. Residency requirement 6 months, not a year. You beat me to the punch on that. Mayor, I agree. the city manager should own a home, so he or she knows every time they institute a tax increase, they're going to pay for that tax increase along with the rest of us. Our last city manager did not actually own a home until her last year of tenure. She rented for the first few years. The requirement, I would like to see our new city manager hold regular meetings with the citizens of DeKalb. Let's try something new where they hold a forum. The chief every now and then will hold a forum and meet with citizens. I think the future city manager, it should be in the job description, maybe hold a monthly or quarterly forum with the citizens to get input and ask questions. Our previous city manager did not like to take phone calls and was unwilling to answer questions in person. Occasionally, I would get an email from her. This is also an opportunity for the council to look at the structure of the city as a whole, to combine the positions of city manager, assistant city manager, finance director, restructure it to save the taxpayers money and pension costs. Now, it's tempting. I heard the topic of salary that Dwayne brought up. We need to advertise what the salary is before sending out requests for proposals. Put an upper limit on it. Just because we have a new city manager, we're going to be hiring a city manager, resist the temptation to put a higher dollar figure, figuring it's going to attract the person you want. Let's live within our means. Now, I think it would be a great idea to wait 6 months before bringing in a new city manager. This will allow the budget to recoup the payout that you guys passed as part of the consent agenda. So let's recoup that money. As far as the hiring process goes, an in-house search, I think, is the way to go. Don't waste money on an outside search firm. The backup material says that HR will coordinate the creation of the position profile, which will identify education, skills, qualifications, and experiences and leadership style required for the position. I believe the council, under the advisement of your constituents, should have a say in this. When GE hires a new CEO, the board of directors hires the CEO.
You're well over 3 minutes, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, last thing, public needs a larger seat at the hiring table. Let's make sure the public is fully included, not just friends of the council or the mayor. The last mayor had his own little committee. Let's involve all the public. Thank you.
That's not going to happen. I mean, what your suggestion is going to happen.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have one other speaker on this, Michael Haji Sheikh. Michael?
Actually, Mayor, I have to be other places, as you know, on Monday night, so this is my only chance to come in and speak with you guys. A couple simple things. One, there is an issue of consistent rulemaking in this city, okay? Yes, with the city manager gone, you're having to come up with a new city manager, but we have an issue with consistent rulemaking. We have a problem with making sure that we follow all laws in this city. So when you do the search, I assume that you guys are going to follow the Open Meetings Act, even with the search committee. Because NIU, we found we have to follow the Open Meetings Act, even with our search committees.
We do too.
Yeah, I'm just pointing it out. A lot of people don't know that. The other thing I like to point out is that you have I believe, a public hearing today. And I believe one of your Section A of 11.1 of the, 65 ILCS 5, I believe. It says that you have to have 14 days notice for this stuff for 2 different papers. One of your papers was 2 days short. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that that there's got to be some magic in that law that shows that you can cut 2 days off somewhere. But I don't think so.
Yeah, we're going to address that at the council meeting.
I'm just pointing it because I'm having to leave. The other thing one third thing I'd like to throw in my support for the parking initiative, so some people, my friends, will probably not like that. And the fourth and final thing, I'm trying to keep it quick because I know you want to get out. When you use the word in my business, I'm an engineer, but I'm not a licensed engineer. When you say things like structural integrity, those are words our industry owns, okay? There is a professional engineering licensing process. You have to have a degree in engineering. You have to take tests. You have to get a PE. And when you say that some physical structure in town is not structurally sound, then you better hope that the people who you're telling that to don't get an structural engineer and show you the other way around, because you walk into a lawsuit in those cases. You have, the structural engineer also has to be bonded and have insurance, which is something why I don't have a PE, because I don't need it for my industry, because I don't want to carry insurance. So, thank you for your time. I hope the meeting this evening is good, and appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mark, can you wait around until the next meeting for your? Yeah. Yeah, we'd appreciate that. You know, we owe you big time now, Mark, you know. 6 minutes. Okay. Are there any, is there anybody who wants to speak to anything not on the agenda? I'd like to move that into public participation into city council if we could. Okay. Any final comments from our city council? There is no executive session this evening. I'd call for an adjournment of the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We are adjourned. We will resume as city council at 6:10. 6:10. Thank you.